The year was 2347, and humanity had reached a turning point. For centuries, Earth had been confined within an invisible wall known as a galactic barrier, a mysterious energy field that surrounded the solar system like an impenetrable shell. No ship had ever managed to cross it. Some believe it was a natural phenomenon, while others thought it was created by an ancient civilization long gone. Whatever its origin, the barrier kept Earth isolated from the rest of the universe. But now, everything was about to change. The EOS Voyager stood as humanity's greatest achievement, a massive spacecraft equipped with cutting-edge technology and a crew of the brightest minds Earth had to offer. Its mission was simple yet monumental: break through the galactic barrier and explore what lay beyond. Captain Jin-Ho Lee, a man known for his calm under pressure and sharp decision-making skills, commanded the vessel. Beside him was First Officer Hygiene Park, whose intelligence and curiosity made her the perfect second-in-command. Together, they led a team of scientists, engineers, and explorers who shared one goal: to push the boundaries of human knowledge. As the EOS Voyager approached the galactic barrier, excitement buzzed through the ship. The crew gathered in the observation deck, their eyes glued to the massive screen showing the shimmering wall of light ahead. It looked almost alive, pulsating faintly with colors no one could quite describe. The barrier seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, a reminder of just how small humanity truly was. Jin-Ho stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls tightly. He glanced at Hygiene, who was seated nearby, studying data on her tablet. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly, breaking the silence between them. Hygiene looked up and nodded. "We've trained for years for this moment," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her veins. "Let's hope all those simulations paid off." The countdown began, echoing throughout the ship. 10 seconds until impact, announced engineer Miare Kim from her station. Her fingers danced across the keyboard as she monitored the ship's systems. Everyone held their breath as the numbers ticked down. When the timer hit 0, the EOS Voyager surged forward, its engines roaring with power. The ship collided with the barrier, and for a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the entire vessel shuddered violently. Alarms blared as lights flickered, and the crew scrambled to stabilize the situation. "What's happening?" shouted scientist Dae-Young Choi, clutching the edge of his seat. His face was pale, but his eyes were wide with awe and fear. "It's resisting us," Miare exclaimed, frantically typing commands into her console. "The barrier is pushing back." Jin-Ho clenched his jaw, fighting to maintain control of the ship. "Hold steady. We're not giving up now," he barked over the chaos. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he pushed the engines to their limits. Slowly but surely, the EOS Voyager began to pierce through the barrier. For a few terrifying seconds, the crew felt weightless, as if they were floating in a void. The screens went black, and the hum of the engines faded into eerie silence. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the turbulence ended. The ship stabilized, and the lights came back on. "We did it," whispered Hygiene, her voice trembling with disbelief. She turned to Jin-Ho, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "We actually broke through." Cheers erupted across the ship as the crew realized they had succeeded where countless others had failed. They were no longer bound by the confines of their solar system. Humanity had finally stepped into the unknown, but their celebration was short-lived. As the external cameras activated, revealing the world beyond the galactic barrier, the crew fell silent. What they saw left them speechless. Instead of the vast expanse of stars they had expected, the EOS Voyager was surrounded by a strange, ethereal glow. It was as though they had entered another dimension entirely. Strange shapes floated in the distance, massive structures that defied logic and physics. "What is that?" murmured Dae-Young, his voice barely audible. He leaned closer to the screen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Before anyone could answer, the ship's sensors picked up something even more astonishing. A colossal object loomed ahead, dwarfing the EOS Voyager in comparison. It was a sphere, miles wide, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and pulse with life. The structure emitted a low, resonant hum that reverberated through the ship. "It's watching us," said Miare softly, her hands frozen above her keyboard. She couldn't explain how she knew. It was just a feeling deep in her gut. Captain Jinho took a deep breath, steadying himself. Everyone stay calm. Let's gather as much information as we can before making any decisions. He turned to Hygiene. Prepare a scan of the structure. I want to know everything we can learn about it. As the crew worked tirelessly to analyze the sphere, a growing sense of unease settled over the ship. Something about the structure felt wrong. It wasn't hostile exactly, but it radiated an aura of ancient power that made their skin crawl. Hours passed, and the scans revealed little. The sphere appeared to be made of a material unlike anything recorded in human science. Its surface was smooth yet textured, shifting constantly as if alive. More disturbingly, the ship's sensors detected faint signals emanating from the sphere, patterns that resembled a language, though one far too complex for them to decipher. We need to investigate further, declared Hygiene after reviewing the data. This could be our only chance to understand what we're dealing with. Jinho hesitated, weighing the risks. Venturing out into uncharted territory was dangerous, especially when they knew so little about their surroundings. But curiosity burned brightly within him, and he couldn't ignore the opportunity to uncover the secrets of the universe. All right, he said finally, we'll send a team to explore the sphere, but we proceed carefully. If anything feels off, we pull back immediately. The decision sent a ripple of tension through the crew. While some were eager to step foot on the mysterious structure, others feared what they might find. Still, preparations began swiftly. A small shuttlecraft was prepped, and volunteers stepped forward to join the mission. As the shuttle detached from the EO's Voyager and headed toward the sphere, the crew aboard the main ship watched anxiously. None of them could predict what awaited them, or the choices they would soon be forced to make. The shuttlecraft drifted closer to the colossal sphere, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the dim light of distant stars. The crew aboard the EO's Voyager held their breath as they watched the live feed on the main screen. Inside the shuttle were First Officer Hygiene Park, Engineer Miare Kim, and Scientist Dae-young Choi, three individuals chosen for their sharp minds and steady nerves. Captain Jinho Lee had entrusted them with the task of investigating the mysterious structure, but none of them could shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far beyond their understanding. As the shuttle approached, the sphere seemed to grow larger with every passing second. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns that pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. The patterns shifted and rearranged themselves constantly, forming shapes that looked both alien and strangely familiar. It was as if the sphere was alive, watching them silently as they drew nearer. "This thing give me the creeps," muttered Miare, her fingers hovering over the controls. She glanced at the others, her face pale but determined. "Do you think it knows we're here?" "I don't know," replied Hygiene, her voice calm despite the unease in her chest. "But we can't turn back now. We need answers." Dae-young leaned forward, his eyes glued to the monitor displaying the scans. "Look at these readings. The material of the sphere isn't solid. It's some kind of energy field. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered." The shuttle finally came to a stop just above the sphere's surface. Hygiene activated the external cameras, capturing detailed images of the shifting patterns. As she zoomed in, she noticed something strange, a series of symbols etched into the surface, glowing faintly. They looked like letters or numbers, but they didn't match any known language. "Those symbols, they might be a message," said Dae-young, pointing at the screen. "If we can decode them, we might learn more about this thing." Hygiene nodded. "Let's land and take a closer look. But stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with." The shuttle descended slowly, touching down on the sphere's smooth surface without resistance. The moment they stepped out, the crew felt an overwhelming sense of awe and dread. The air around them hummed with energy, and the ground beneath their feet felt warm, almost alive. The patterns continued to shift, creating a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow. "This place feels wrong," whispered Miare, clutching her toolkit tightly. "It's like we're being watched." "Stay focused," Hygiene reminded her, though she couldn't deny the eerie sensation crawling up her spine. She turned to Dae-young. "Start recording everything. We'll need all the data we can get." The team moved cautiously, scanning the area with handheld devices. Every step they took sent ripples across the surface, as if the sphere responded to their presence. The symbols glowed brighter as they approached, and Dae-young knelt down to examine them closely. "These markings, they're repeating," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "I think they're part of a code. If I can isolate the pattern, I might be able to translate it." While Dae-young worked, Hygiene and Miare explored further. They soon discovered remnants of other civilizations scattered across the sphere's surface. There were fragments of ships, pieces of machinery, and even ruins that resembled ancient temples. Each artifact bore signs of sudden abandonment, as if whoever had been there before had fled in haste. "This is incredible," murmured Hygiene, running her hand over the rusted hull of a small spacecraft. "Whoever came here didn't leave willingly." Miare frowned, examining a broken piece of technology. "What do you think happened to them?" Before Hygiene could answer, a low rumble echoed through the sphere. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, and the patterns on the surface began to glow brighter. The trio froze, unsure of what was happening. "Dae-young," called Hygiene sharply. "We need to leave. Now!" But Dae-young was too engrossed in his work. "Just a few more seconds. I'm close to cracking the code." "No time," shouted Miare, grabbing his arm and pulling him to his feet. "Something's not right." The rumbling grew louder, and the air around them crackled with energy. Suddenly, a massive beam of light shot up from the center of the sphere, illuminating the entire structure. The crew shielded their eyes as the light enveloped them, and when it faded, they found themselves standing in front of a towering figure. It was humanoid in shape, but made entirely of light. Its features were indistinct, but its presence radiated power and authority. The figure spoke, its voice resonating like thunder inside their minds. "You have awakened me," it said. "I am Caliph, guardian of this realm." The crew stared in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Hygiene stepped forward cautiously, her heart pounding. "Who or what are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am the keeper of the Sentinel," replied Caliph, gesturing to the sphere around them. "This structure was created by the ancient power to safeguard the secrets of the universe. For eons, I have watched over it, ensuring that none who are unworthy may access its knowledge." Dae-young swallowed hard, his mind racing. The ancient power? What happened to them? Kalida's form flickered briefly, as if recalling a painful memory. "They were my creators, but they succumbed to their own hubris. Their thirst for power led to their downfall, and they erased themselves from existence. Now, only I remain to protect their legacy." Miare exchanged a nervous glance with Hygiene. "Why did you bring us here?" she asked hesitantly. "You breached the galactic barrier," Caliph explained. "Your arrival was no accident. Humanity has been observed for centuries, tested for your readiness to join the greater cosmos. Yet, breaking the barrier proves only determination, not wisdom." Hygiene straightened, her resolve strengthening. "Then test us. Prove that we're worthy of your trust." Caliph studied them for a long moment, its luminous gaze piercing through their souls. "Very well. But beware, the trials ahead will challenge everything you believe in. Failure will mean destruction, not only for yourselves, but for all of humanity." The crew exchanged uneasy looks, but none of them backed down. They had come too far to turn back now. "What do we need to do?" asked Hygiene firmly. Caliph raised a hand, and the ground beneath them shifted. A doorway appeared, leading into the depths of the sphere. "Enter and face the trials of worthiness. Only then will I decide your fate." Without hesitation, Hygiene led the way, followed closely by Miare and Dae-young. As they stepped through the doorway, the world around them dissolved into darkness. When the light returned, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with floating platforms. Each platform bore a symbol similar to those on the sphere's surface. "This must be the first trial," said Dae-young, studying the symbols carefully. "We need to choose the right path." "How do we know which one is correct?" asked Miare, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "We trust our instincts," replied Hygiene, "and we stick together no matter what." With that, the three of them stepped onto the nearest platform, bracing themselves for whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did they know, the trials would push them to their limits, forcing them to confront their deepest fears and insecurities. As the platform began to move, carrying them deeper into the sphere, the crew realized they were no longer alone. Shadows flitted around them, whispering voices that seemed to echo their darkest thoughts. The trials had begun, and there was no turning back. The chamber inside the sphere was unlike anything Hygiene, Miare, and Dae Young had ever seen. The air shimmered with faint golden light, and the walls seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Floating platforms surrounded them, each bearing a glowing symbol that pulsed faintly, as if alive. The whispers grew louder, filling their minds with doubts and fears. "This place feels wrong," muttered Miare, clutching her toolkit tightly. Her wide eyes darted around, searching for any sign of danger. "It's like it's trying to break us." Hygiene nodded, her jaw set firmly. "Stay focused. We can't let it get to us." She glanced at Dae Young, who was already analyzing the symbols on the platforms. His face was pale, but his determination shone through. "I think I've figured out the pattern," he said after a moment, pointing to one of the platforms. "This symbol represents unity. If we step on it together, it might guide us forward." Without hesitation, the three of them stepped onto the platform simultaneously. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, the platform began to glow brighter and the chamber shifted around them. The floating platforms disappeared, replaced by a vast, open space filled with towering mirrors. Each mirror reflected not their physical forms, but their inner selves, flaws, fears, and all. "This is a first trial," whispered Hygiene, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. She turned to the others. "We need to face what we see." Dae Young approached the nearest mirror, his reflection staring back at him with accusing eyes. In the reflection, he saw himself hoarding knowledge, hiding discoveries from his colleagues. The image spoke, its voice cold and sharp. "You seek power for yourself. What makes you think you deserve it?" Dae Young flinched, his hands trembling. He wanted to look away, but the mirror held his gaze. I'm not like that anymore," he stammered. "I work for the good of everyone." "Do you?" the reflection sneered. "Or do you still dream of glory?" Miare stepped closer, placing a hand on Dae Young's shoulder. "Don't listen to it," she said firmly. "It's just trying to break you." Encouraged by her words, Dae Young took a deep breath and faced the mirror head-on. "I've made mistakes," he admitted aloud, his voice growing stronger. "But I'm here to help humanity, not myself. That's why I joined this mission." The mirror cracked, shattering into pieces that dissolved into the air. Dae Young exhaled sharply, relief washing over him. "One down," he said, forcing a small smile. Next, Miare stood before her own mirror. Her reflection showed her doubting herself, questioning whether she was truly capable of handling the challenges ahead. The voice in the mirror mocked her insecurities, echoing her worst fears. "You're not strong enough," it taunted. "You'll fail them all." Tears welled up in Mireille's eyes, but she refused to look away. "I may not be perfect," she said through gritted teeth, "but I won't give up. My team needs me, and I won't let them down." Her resolve shattered the mirror, and she wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her moment of weakness. "I'm okay," she muttered when Hygiene gave her a concerned glance. Finally, it was Hygiene's turn. Her reflection showed her standing alone, isolated from the rest of the crew. The voice accused her of being too ambitious, of putting her desire for discovery above the safety of her team. "You care more about success than people," it hissed. "Will you sacrifice them for your goals?" Hygiene clenched her fists, anger bubbling inside her. "No," she said firmly. "I came here to protect my crew, not to endanger them. My duty is to them, not to my own pride." Her mirror shattered like the others, leaving the chamber eerily silent. The golden light dimmed, and the floor beneath their feet began to shift again. A new platform emerged, carrying them deeper into the sphere. When they arrived at the next stage of the trial, they found themselves in a dark, cavernous room. The air was thick with tension, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, atop which rested a glowing orb. Kalitha's voice resonated through the chamber. "The second trial tests your ability to make sacrifices," it announced. "To proceed, one of you must relinquish something precious." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them knew what the orb would demand, but the weight of Kalitha's words hung heavily in the air. Hygiene stepped forward first, reaching out to touch the orb. As her fingers brushed its surface, visions flooded her mind. Images of Earth burning, Cities reduced to rubble, and millions suffering because of humanity's greed. She gasped, pulling her hand back. "It's showing me the consequences of failure," she whispered. "If we don't succeed, this could happen." Mireille hesitated before stepping up next. When she touched the orb, she saw her family, her parents, her siblings, and even old friends she hadn't spoken to in years. They smiled at her, but their faces slowly faded into darkness. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she realized the orb was taking away her memories of them. "I can't," she choked out, stumbling backward. "I can't lose them." Dae-young watched silently, his heart pounding. He knew it was his turn. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand on the orb. Instantly, he felt a searing pain in his mind, as if something vital was being torn away. When the vision ended, he collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. What did it take? Hygiene asked gently, helping him to his feet. Dae-young looked up, his expression hollow. "My formulas," he said quietly. "All the equations and theories I spent years working on, they're gone." The others stared at him in shock. Dae-young's work had been his life's passion, the foundation of his identity. Yet, despite the loss, he managed a weak smile. If it means saving humanity, then it's worth it. The orb dimmed and the room brightened slightly. Kalitha's voice returned, softer this time. "You have shown courage and selflessness, but the final trial awaits." The third trial took place in a vast desert under a blood-red sky. Sand stretched endlessly in every direction, and the heat was unbearable. The crew trudged forward, their bodies weary and their spirits tested. Suddenly, a massive storm erupted, swirling around them with ferocious winds and blinding sand. Through the chaos, they heard Kalitha's voice once more. "The final trial tests your unity. Only by working together can you survive." The storm intensified, threatening to tear them apart. Hygiene grabbed Mireille's hand, pulling her close. "Stay together," she shouted over the howling wind. "We can't let go." Dae-young linked arms with Hygiene, forming a tight circle. Together, they braced against the storm, leaning into one another for support. The wind battered them relentlessly, but their bond held firm. Slowly, the storm began to subside, revealing a calm oasis in the distance. As they entered the oasis, the ground beneath them shifted again, returning them to main chamber of the sphere. Caled appeared before them, its form glowing brighter than before. "You have passed the trials," it declared. "Your courage, sacrifice, and unity prove that humanity may yet be worthy of the ancient power's secrets. But beware, the true test lies ahead." Before the crew could respond, the chamber trembled violently. Alarms blared from the EOS Voyager, and Captain Jinho's voice crackled over their comms. "Hygiene, something's coming. A fleet of unknown ships is heading straight for us." Kalitha's form flickered, its expression grave. "The remnants of the ancient power awaken. They sense your presence and will stop at nothing to reclaim their dominion." Hygiene turned to her teammates, her eyes blazing with determination. "We've come too far to give up now. Let's get back to the ship and prepare for whatever comes next." With Kalitha's blessing, the crew raced back to the shuttle, their hearts heavy but resolute. They didn't know what awaited them beyond the sphere, but they were ready to face it, together. The EOS Voyager trembled as alarms blared throughout the ship. Captain Jinho Lee stood at the helm, his face etched with worry as he studied the screens displaying the incoming threat. A fleet of unknown ships was approaching rapidly, their designs unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The vessels were dark and jagged, exuding an aura of menace that sent chills down the spines of everyone aboard. "They're moving fast," muttered Engineer Mireille Kim, her fingers flying across the console as she tried to gather more data. "We can't outrun them." Jinho clenched his jaw, his mind racing through options. "How long until they reach us?" "Less than 10 minutes," replied scientist Dae-young Choi, his voice tense. He turned to Jinho, his eyes wide with fear. "What do we do? We're no match for them." Before Jinho could respond, the shuttle carrying Hygiene Park and the rest of the exploration team docked with the EOS Voyager. Hygiene rushed onto the bridge, her expression grim but determined. "Captain, we need to prepare for battle. Caliph warned us. They're remnants of the ancient power, and they'll stop at nothing to destroy us." Jinho nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we fight. but we'll need every advantage we can get. Hygiene stepped forward, addressing the crew. Kayla said we've proven ourselves worthy of the ancient power secrets. If we can use that knowledge, we might stand a chance. Miare frowned, glancing between Hygiene and Jinho. But how? We barely understand what we learned in the trials. Dae-young spoke up, his voice steadier now. During the trials, I noticed something about the symbols on the sphere. They weren't just random, they were instructions. If we can replicate them using the ship systems, we might be able to tap into the ancient power's energy. Jinho considered this for a moment, then gave a sharp nod. Do it. Miare, work with Dae-young to integrate those patterns into our weapon systems. Hygiene, coordinate with the crew to ensure everyone is ready for combat. We don't have much time. The crew sprang into action, working tirelessly to prepare the ship for the impending battle. Miare and Dae-young pored over the data collected during the trials, deciphering the intricate patterns and translating them into commands the ship's computers could understand. Meanwhile, Hygiene rallied the crew, ensuring that everyone knew their role and would prepare to defend the Eos Voyager. As the unknown fleet drew closer, tension mounted aboard the ship. The enemy vessels loomed large on the screens, their dark forms casting ominous shadows against the stars. Each ship bristled with weapons, and their movements were eerily synchronized, as if controlled by a single mind. They're spreading out, reported Miare, her voice tight with anxiety. They're surrounding us. Jinho gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. Stay calm. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always found a way through. Hygiene moved to stand beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll make it through this. Together. Finally, the enemy ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy lashed out, striking the Eos Voyager with devastating force. The ship rocked violently, throwing several crew members off balance. Alarm screamed as S.H.I.E.L.D. began to fail under the relentless assault. We can't take much more of this, shouted Miare, frantically adjusting the S.H.I.E.L.D. generators. If we don't act soon, we're done for. Almost there, called Dae-young from a station. Sweat dripped down his face as he worked feverishly to complete the integration of the ancient powers patterns into the ship systems. Just a few more seconds. Jinho gritted his teeth, guiding the ship through evasive maneuvers to avoid the worst of the attacks. Hold on, everyone. We're not giving up yet. At last, Dae-young let out a triumphant shout. It's done. The system is online. Without hesitation, Hygiene activated the newly enhanced weapon, a massive energy beam powered by the ancient power's essence. The beam surged forth, cutting through space with blinding intensity. It struck one of the enemy's ships, slicing it cleanly in half. The other vessels hesitated, their synchronized movements faltering as they processed the unexpected. Counterattack. Again, ordered Jinho, his voice firm despite the chaos around him. Target their lead ship. The crew obeyed, firing the beam repeatedly. One by one, the enemy ships fell, their dark forms disintegrating under the overwhelming power of the ancient energy. But the victory came at a cost. The strain on the Eos Voyager systems was immense, and the ship groaned under the pressure. We're pushing the engines too hard, warned Miare, her hands trembling as she monitored the readings. If we keep this up, we'll overload. Jinho hesitated, weighing the risks. Finally, he made a decision. One last shot. Aim for their flagship, its control in the others. Hygiene adjusted the targeting systems, locking onto the largest vessel in the fleet. With a final surge of energy, the beam fired once more, piercing straight to the flagship's core. The explosion was massive, engulfing the remaining ships in a fiery inferno. Within moments, the enemy fleet was gone. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed what had just happened. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, cheers erupted. Soft at first, then growing louder as the reality of their survival sank in. But their celebration was short-lived. As the dust settled, the Sentinel, the colossal sphere that housed Caliph, began to collapse. Its surface cracked and crumbled, releasing waves of energy that rippled outward. What's happening? Asked Dae-young, his voice tinged with panic. It's falling apart, replied Hygiene, her eyes fixed on the screen. Using the ancient power must have destabilized it. Kalitha's voice echoed through the ship, calm but sorrowful. The Sentinel has served its purpose. You have proven yourselves worthy, but my time has come to an end. No, shouted Hygiene, stepping toward the main screen. There must be another way. You can't leave us now. I am bound to the Sentinel, Caleb explained. Its destruction means mine as well. But do not grieve, for you carry my legacy. Use the knowledge you have gained wisely, and remember, the true test of humanity lies not in power, but in compassion. Before anyone could respond, the Sentinel exploded in a burst of light, scattering fragments of energy across the void. The Eos Voyager rocked violently, caught in the shockwave, but somehow managed to stay intact. When the turbulence subsided, the crew sat in stunned silence. The weight of what they had accomplished and lost pressed heavily on their shoulders. They had survived the remnants of the ancient power, but at great cost. Jinho broke the silence, his voice steady but filled with emotion. We've been given a second chance. Let's honor Kala's sacrifice by doing what we set out to do: explore, learn, and protect, for Earth and for all of humanity. The crew nodded, their determination renewed. Though battered and weary, they knew their journey was far from over. Beyond the ruins of the Sentinel lay uncharted space, filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And though the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, they faced it together, with courage, unity, and hope. The Eos Voyager drifted silently through the void, its battered hull a testament to the battle that had just taken place. The remnants of the Sentinel were scattered across space like shards of glass, their faint glow fading with each passing moment. Inside the ship, the crew sat in stunned silence, still processing the events that had unfolded. They had survived an encounter with the remnants of the ancient power, but the cost weighed heavily on their hearts. Captain Jinho Lee stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls tightly. His eyes were fixed on the stars ahead, but his mind was elsewhere. Kalata's final words echoed in his thoughts. The true test of humanity lies not in power, but in compassion. He knew those words carried a deeper meaning, one that would shape humanity's future among the stars. Hygiene Park approached him slowly, her expression somber but resolute. "Captain," she said softly, breaking the silence, "what do we do now?" Jinho turned to face her, his gaze steady despite the exhaustion etched into his features. "We move forward," he replied firmly. Caleb entrusted us with the knowledge and power of the ancient power. It's our responsibility to use it wisely. Hygiene nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. But how? We barely understand what we've been given. What if we make the same mistakes as the ancients? That's why we need to be careful, Jinho said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll take it step by step. First, we repair the ship and regroup. Then, we decide where to go from here. With renewed purpose, the crew set to work. Engineer Miare Kim and scientist Dae-Young Choi led efforts to assess the damage inflicted during the battle. The Eos Voyager had suffered significant wear and tear. Its engines were strained, shields were nearly depleted, and several systems were offline. Despite the challenges, the team worked tirelessly, determined to get the ship back in working order. As repairs progressed, Hygiene gathered the crew for a meeting in the observation deck. She wanted to ensure everyone was on the same page about their next steps. "We've been through a lot," she began, addressing the group, "but we've also achieved something incredible. We broke through the galactic barrier, faced the remnants of the ancient power, and survived. Now, it's up to us to decide what comes next." Miare raised her hand hesitantly. "Do we head back to Earth, or keep exploring?" Dae-Young chimed in, his voice thoughtful. "If we go back now, we risk losing everything we've learned. But staying out here means facing unknown dangers. Either way, it won't be easy." Jinho stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Earth needs to know what's out here. But returning immediately isn't an option. The ship isn't ready yet. For now, we continue exploring cautiously. Every discovery we make brings us closer to understanding our place in the universe." The crew murmured in agreement, their spirits lifting slightly at the thought of continuing their mission. Still, the weight of responsibility hung over them. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were ambassadors for all of humanity. Over the next few days, the Eos Voyager ventured deeper into uncharted space. The region beyond the galactic barrier was unlike anything they had ever seen. Nebulas shimmered in vibrant hues, planets orbited distant stars, and strange phenomena danced across the cosmos. Each new sight filled the crew with awe and wonder, reminding them why they had embarked on this journey in the first place. One evening, as the crew gathered in the observation deck to watch a particularly stunning nebula, Hygiene spoke up. "Do you think we're ready for this?" she asked quietly, her gaze fixed on the swirling colors outside the window. To carry the legacy of the ancient power? No one answered immediately. The question lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Finally, Miar broke the silence. "I don't think anyone can truly be ready for something like this, but we have each other. As long as we stick together, I believe we can handle whatever comes our way." Her words resonated with the others, easing some of their doubts. Daeyoung nodded, adding, "And we have Kael'thas's teachings to guide us. Remember what it said, to wield power with wisdom and compassion." Jinho smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride in his crew. Exactly. Humanity has always risen to meet its challenges. This is no different. We'll learn, adapt, and grow stronger because of it. As the days turned into weeks, the crew grew more confident in their abilities. They continued to study the data collected from the Sentinel, piecing together fragments of the ancient power's history. They discovered that the ancients had once thrived as a peaceful civilization, using their advanced technology to explore the galaxy and share knowledge with others. However, their downfall came when greed and ambition corrupted their leaders, leading to internal conflict and eventual destruction. "This is our warning," Hygiene said during one of their discussions. "We can't let power blind us. If we do, we'll end up like the ancients." Jinho agreed. "Then it's up to us to prove that humanity can rise above its flaws, to show that we're capable of greatness, not just for ourselves, but for the entire galaxy." Eventually, after months of exploration, the Eos Voyager received a faint signal from Earth. It was weak and distorted, but unmistakably human. The message contained updates about life on the planet and expressed hope that the crew was safe. Reading it brought tears to many eyes. It was a reminder of home and the people waiting for them. "We should respond," Hygiene suggested. "Let them know we're alive and share what we've learned." But not everything, Jinho cautioned. Some things are better explained in person. Besides, we still have much to discover before we return. The crew spent hours crafting a carefully worded reply, detailing their success in breaching the galactic barrier and hinting at the wonders they had encountered. They promised to return someday, bringing with them the knowledge needed to unite humanity with the stars. As the message was sent, the crew gathered in the observation deck one last time. Outside the windows, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Though weary from their journey, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We've only scratched the surface," Jinho said, addressing the group. "There's so much more out there, and so much more we can achieve. Together, we'll forge a path forward, not just for ourselves, but for all of humanity." The crew nodded, their resolve unwavering. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and sacrifices, but they also knew they had each other, and the lessons they had learned along the way. As the Eos Voyager set course for parts unknown, the crew looked to the future with hope and determination. They were no longer just explorers. They were pioneers, carrying the dreams of billions into the great unknown. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it with courage, unity, and compassion, the true measure of humanity's potential. And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, the Eos Voyager sailed onward, leaving behind the ruins of the past and stepping boldly into the promise of tomorrow.